I remembered something yesterday. While I was watering my garden, I rushed inside and watered the center of the story. I searched the internet all over for something similar to what we encountered. After about an hour of useless Google searches, I finally found something pretty similar, but at the same time pretty different. What am I talking about? What did I find similar to it? Well, the thing is, I remembered the finger crops, and I searched for over an hour before finding a no-sleep guide that reported entire hand plants that eventually grew into replica people. While that was disturbing as all hell, I still felt it worth sharing our experience. So, here it goes. Back in the 70s, 80s, and even up to the early 2000s, tobacco was the major cash crop in our area. The majority of local families depended on the money earned from the tobacco sales in the fall, just to survive the winter, as well as to provide Christmas for their kids. It was a way of life. All spring long, the families would work to set up float beds of styrofoam plates that held 24 seedlings of tobacco plants. It would float on top water with added nutrients inside to build up the platform. While the seeds were taking off, the winter's cover crop of clover would be plowed into the ground to add nutrients to the soil. The field had to be rough enough to plow in early spring. That's when the seedlings were to develop their root system. The fields would be plowed again, then descend into the furrows of rows. The plants would then be set by hand, usually. Later on, people could afford setter attachments to the tractors that would seat 2 people. Those 2 people would then pluck plants from the float trays and set them in a wheel, and the machine would drop them into the ground a set distance apart. The plants would be left to grow until they developed flower tops. The tops would then be cut or snapped off by hand to make the plant kinda bush out. A couple of months later, farmers would drop sticks every other row. Then, workers would cut to the next plants down, spearing them through the stalk onto the stick. The cutters would swing a very sharp, specialized hatchet called a tobacco knife. Each worker would cut 2 rows at a time for a few cents a stick. Each stick would hold 6 to 8 stalks of tobacco. The sticks were then left in the field for a couple of weeks before being collected, and then they were hung from the rafters of the barn to cure. In late fall, workers would climb into the barn chopping the sticks down. Then people would strip the leaves off the stalks and press the leaves into bales. Each plant had multiple types of leaves. Each type was placed into its own bale. The bales would then be transported to auction where tobacco companies would bid on the lot. I described the process so you could see just how hard these families work for just a little bit of cash. Some years the price would be 50 cents a pound. Some other years it would be over $1 per pound. That's why the different bales of hay for the different leaves. The better leaves brought better money, but the companies wanted the other leaves too, what we would just call trash, just for a much, much lower price. The families worked hard, lived hard, and just barely managed to make ends meet. Back then, a majority of local families lived under the national poverty line. Hard times all around. Classic, money's tight and times are hard, but here's your fucking Christmas card type situations. It had to be the middle of spring of '88 when this happened. I remember that because I had recently got married, just a few months before this. I was actually on my honeymoon, which we had to wait to take for some financial reasons. But when the first calls came in, even the mayor and the county attorney had their panties wadded around their dangly bits. I was called in at 3 in the morning after getting home that same morning. I was ordered to do whatever I had to, but I had to get my happy ass to the apartment post-haste. They even hung up on me, too. When I dragged my tired ass to the office, I was slightly shaken to see the entire force on duty. The mayor, the chief of police, and the county attorney. All rather impatiently waiting on my arrival. I was greeted by not happy friends, but by an entire building of scared-ass cops and county officials. Well, it's about fucking time. Welcome home, Sheriff. Now sit your ass down so we can get you caught up on this situation, the county attorney barked, before turning on a heel and leaving the room. Right, 3 days ago we received the first call. The Larson's farm hand called 911, ranting and raving about fingers in the tobacco trays. Dispatch sent out an ambulance and a patrol unit to respond, thinking the kid had sliced off a finger at work. When they arrived on the scene, the farmhand, Mr. Timothy Gray, was sitting on a tractor tire drinking from a glass bottle of whiskey. I feel the need to mention this was approximately 7:30 a.m. at this point. The EMS tech rushed to his position to examine a possible injury. I will now read Mr. Gray's response verbatim. Not me, you dumbass. Look in the fucking beds. Fuck it, I quit. Tell the Larsons to keep the money I've worked off this week. He then drank the bottle, staggered to his camper on the property. A deputy told him to stay put, but he was drunk, and we would arrest him if we even tried to start his truck. It was at this point that the other deputies decided to investigate. Collins, tell the sheriff what you found, ordered the mayor. Collins stood up to talk. The mayor exited the room, but as he was leaving, he stopped at my desk. He whispered, "Come see me immediately after you're briefed. Don't tell anyone, though." As I approached the float beds, I noted something strange. A smell, like a wood smoke mixed with a strong hint of cat piss. Not just the ammonia used in the beds, this was something else. I raised a plastic covering to examine the trays and, well, I just about shat myself, sir. We were a relaxed agency back then. I couldn't believe my eyes. Fingers, dozens of them, wriggling around, like hands used under the trays, poking through. Except when I pulled out the tray, there was no hand, just fingers. First knuckle where it would attach to the root of the hand, growing from the soil. I plucked one out of the dirt and, well, it was fucking warm. It still had red roots and everything, just flowing around this white bulb type of thing. That's where the knuckle was. The hands continued to wriggle for a while, but I could feel it get colder. It started moving slower. I don't know why, but I put it back in the goddamn tray. Put the tray back in the water. A few seconds later, the fingers started to wiggle around again. And that's when he passed out. Thankfully, the EMS was already there, laughed Colin's partner Todd. As the bus monkeys, that's what we called them back in the day, they called us bubblegum machines, chucked on old Lightweight there, I decided to take a look at the float beds. I can honestly say that was the single most disturbing thing I had ever seen in my life, and I've cleaned up cannibal murder scenes before. Those fucking things were growing from the trays, just wriggling around, reaching for anything that moved. He finished looking just a little bit more than a bit sickened. I sent samples of the roots of an entire finger to a college, and they still haven't gotten back to me. I can't get the professor on the phone. From what I could see and everything I know, they're just normal fucking fingers, with roots of some kind. Our local coroner/doctor said, polishing his glasses. And now, to add to the damn situation, we have 3 more farms in the last 24 hours all reporting fingers on the tobacco trays, for a total of 11 farms affected, Terry, the rookie, said. I sat there trying to decide if this was all a fucking prank, or if it was even honestly happening. I received my definitive answer a couple of minutes later when the chief came in with a small clay pot. There were 3 fingers in the dirt just fucking wriggling around, and, well, like, looking at me. I swear that sounds like a lie, but these fingers could fucking see. I moved my hand above them and they followed. I waved at them and they mimicked my movement. I flipped them off and 2 of the fingers folded down, leaving one standing up, kinda dancing in a circular motion. I stood up and walked my tired ass to the mayor's office. When I walked to his door, he stood up and walked to the door too, locking it behind me. He proceeded to motion towards a chair and went behind his desk. I could tell you got to see the sample here. Well, I think we need this. The mayor reached down in his desk and poured us each a tumbler of scotch. We sipped our drinks and he continued. I think we gotta call in some of the Alphabet Squad to handle this, Sheriff. I just don't think we have the ability to do it alone. Then, what about the families that were counting on the tobacco money? What do we do with them? Half their crops are fingers, and we just confiscated them all. But that does nothing to help them. Well, do we have any of the emergency AG funds left? I mean, somebody pays for the crops with mold damage, right? Okay, yeah, sure, the Department of AG would love to pay for a bunch of failed crops due to a finger infestation. I don't even know who to call about this. These things came from somewhere, and we need to ship them somewhere too. We tried to destroy some, as an experiment in containment. They don't burn. The charred remains reanimate with just a single drop of moisture. Cutting them up forces them to sprout roots like eyes from a damn tater. The only thing that can configure is round them up and ship them off somewhere. I can look for other ways to help the families. I need you to go to the tax department and get a list of properties with tobacco bases. Then go check them out. I'll try to figure out what to do with these fucking things and find a way to supplement the families this winter. I finished my drink and left his office, going upstairs to the tax office. I had the list printed out and I found about 56 other farms in the county that had bases. I split my troops up, each 7 going into a cruiser or county truck. We tackled the list as a giant 8-headed worm. I took the most distant farms to the east next to wet country. Coincidence? No. My plan was to go home and drink copious amounts of alcohol. The 8 farms on my list all turned out to be empty. I got a radio message from another trooper that stopped to render aid at a scene of an MVA. I finished out his list for him. The last of the farms on his list, I hit the motherlode. Every plant was a bed of wagging fingers. I called the mayor, who sent out 4 county pickup trucks with plastic beds so they can hold water. We loaded every single one of the finger plants into the truck. The family was devastated. They were counting on that money for living, not for comfort, food, rent, and shit like that. I was tearing up. I watched Jeb Tolson, a 6'8", 300-pound farmer, cry. He was devastated. He didn't know how he was going to feed his family this winter. I gave him my card with my home phone number written on it, telling him to call me if I could do anything at all to help. On my drive back to the warehouse, I contacted our game warden through the radio. I told him that he needed to be a little more lax on some poaching this winter. I told him something had gone wrong with a major chunk of the populace's bases. He was supportive of the idea, but he did say anybody caught who didn't need the meat would go to jail, and the meat would go to charity, as usually for families that just need a little bit of extra help. When I arrived back at the warehouse with the evidence, just as a few of the other guys were getting back too, in total, after roundup, there were 36 farms hit by what was slyly dubbed, the finger bang. I would later meet a few guys when the mayor called in. I even called my brother. My brother is odd. He loves these carnivorous plants. He has dozens of Venus flytraps, pincher plants, and some thing that looks like a fucking meat flower. The meat flower is nasty. It smells like a corpse flower, but not too strong, just strong enough to attract prey. The damn thing snaps shut when stimulated. It's disgusting. I was hoping maybe he could help. He couldn't. But the weirdo did take several fingers to feed to his damn plants. I told you. He's pretty fucking odd. However, I did get a call from Dear Brother the next day. He tried to feed the fingers to the meat flower and pincher plant. Evidently, the meat flower snap closed, and the finger fucking went off. It managed to grow a fingernail, just enough to cut through the petals. The finger inside the meat flower struggled and fought. The others tried to crawl to its location, like they were trying to help. But the thing I found most odd about this phone call was my brother wasn't creeped out. He was just pissed off that he paid $3,000 for the meat flower. I told you, weird as fuck. We never did figure out where those things exactly came from. They never got any bigger. When one sprout dies, a new fingernail will be poking up through the dirt in 24 hours. I know they can live for years at a time. They don't really care about temperature, but they don't act as lively in the cold. The vast majority of the fingers were smuggled out west, somewhere in the PNW. Some were kept as souvenirs, and for science, of course. I'm sitting here watching mine wave at me right now. I kept a black one, a tan one, and 3 white ones. I originally have had 5 white fingers. When one dies, another one grows. Not always the same color or sex. Not always different. They don't all have fingerprints, but the ones that do never track to anybody, alive or dead. The DNA reads as human, but a human that would never survive birth. They don't flower. They never develop past the finger. They don't grow any bigger than a normal human finger. The strangest thing, to me anyway, is they don't grow like a human. They sprout a full-grown nail, and then a finger fully emerges after about 24 hours. I didn't find out where they came from. We never saw them appear again. We didn't call the feds. We did pull some cash together, and the guys got deer tags, and we hunted the fill. We distributed the meat and cash among the destroyed families by the finger bang. We got them gifts for the kids for Christmas, and we got them some school supplies and new outfits for the kids to start school. We couldn't replace the money lost, but we did help some. Sorry this one was a little bit long, but it had to be told. It had to be told so I could tell the next story. The one that kind of hinges on you knowing all of this one. I probably should have put the line at the top in the first few paragraphs before advertising and discussing tobacco growing. Hell, I don't really expect anyone to read this one. But I do expect folks to say I copied an idea from a very popular story. I don't have anything to prove that I did, except for a fist flipping me the bird in a flower pot. Well, farewell till next time. I would like to thank all the lovely, amazing patrons currently listed on screen right now. Dan R, Neophyte Games, Chaos X, JY, Pyromancer, Hayden MH, Ethan A, Daniel H, Maximilian Charles P, Go Cute Puppy LLC, Young Sykes, Dark Side of the Bear, Revenick Paul T, Mr. Swiston, and Sarcastic B. Guys, thank you all so much.